Welcome to Midnight Clues.
With Clara Monroe and Elias Gray, we pull apart the stories the world can't stop whispering about. That feeling of your home, your sanctuary, suddenly becoming a source of dread. It's the stuff of nightmares.
It really is. It taps into such a primal fear, losing that sense of safety in the one place you're meant to feel completely secure.
And yeah, that unsettling reality is exactly what we're digging into today. We're doing a deep dive into the, bewildering and genuinely disturbing story of the Broaddus family and what happened with their supposed dream home at 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey.
Right.
And just so you know, our goal is basically to pull out the key bits of this, frankly, bizarre case and try to figure out what really went down for you listening.
It's more than just telling the story, isn't it? It's trying to understand all the strange, unsettling layers of this mystery.
Definitely. So let's set the scene first. Westfield, New Jersey, you picture this affluent suburb kind of place where, things are normally pretty quiet and safe.
Uh-huh. Very much that vibe.
And get this, back in 2014, it was actually ranked the 99th safest city in the U.S. Like, incredibly safe on paper.
Wow, okay.
And for Maria Broaddus, moving back there was a big deal. She actually grew up in Westfield, so she was excited to return with her husband, Derek, and their 3 kids. They were young, like 5, 8, and 10.
So it was a homecoming for her. And 657 Boulevard, the house itself, that was a huge commitment. They paid $1.3 million, which was actually over the asking price.
Yeah, they were clearly all in, planning their future there, had big plans for renovations, wanted it perfect before they actually moved the family in.
Makes sense.
Then the first letter shows up. Just shatters that whole vision. It was June 2014, Derek's at the house checking the mail.
Right.
And mixed in with the usual junk, there's this weird envelope. Kind of thick, card-shaped, white. The handwriting's described as thick, almost clumsy, addressed simply to the new owner.
Oof, that alone just feels off, doesn't it?
Right.
An anonymous letter addressed so impersonally.
Yeah.
Already invasive.
Totally. And what was inside was properly unsettling. It starts kind of friendly, almost. Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood.
Okay, standard enough.
But then it takes this immediate weird turn. The writer talks about their family watching the house for decades, grandfather in the 20s, father in the 60s, and asks these really pointed questions like, do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? It just plants that seed of doubt, makes you uneasy.
Yeah, it creates this instant feeling that there's some hidden, maybe dark history the new owners are completely unaware of. Like, the house itself has secrets.
Exactly. And then they start making observations, mentions their Honda minivan, the contractors working there. Okay, maybe someone nosy, but then it gets way more personal. You have children. I have seen them. Says they counted 3 initially, then asks if more are coming. And this question, it's just chilling. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children?
Wow. That's a bizarre and disturbing leap. Connecting buying a house with greed and then linking it to the kids in that way.
It's awful. And then this line, once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. I mean, that sounds like a direct threat against the children, predatory almost.
Absolutely. That crosses a serious line.
And the closing is it's so theatrical but
Yeah.
menacing. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Welcome, my friends. Welcome. Let the party begin. Signed ominously, The Watcher, in cursive.
That mix of casual observation and direct threat, plus the constant surveillance vibe. It's designed to freak you out, to make you paranoid. What kind of person writes that?
Derek's reaction was exactly what you'd expect. Turn off all the lights, immediately called the police. And the cop who showed up, his reaction was apparently just a bewildered, what the fuck is this? Which, fair enough, but he also suggested just moving the construction equipment? Maybe he didn't grasp the full creepiness right away.
Well, it's hard for law enforcement sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Balancing a potentially serious threat against the possibility of like a weird prank or hoax.
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line?
True. But the Broadduses weren't taking any chances. They emailed the previous owners, John and Andrea Woods, and they specifically referenced that really unsettling line from the letter.
The young bloodline.
Yeah. I asked the Woods to bring me young blood. They were obviously hoping the Woods could give them some kind of context, anything.
Desperate for answers.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out who this Watcher person could be and why they were being targeted like this.
And Andrea Woods' reply was, well, it was a bombshell, really. She admitted, yeah, they had gotten a letter from the Watcher, too, just a few days before they moved out.
Why?
Yeah. Also mentioned the family watching the house, but she said they just thought it was odd, kind of weird, and they actually threw it away. Didn't think it was serious enough to warn the Broadduces.
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty big omission. Even if their letter wasn't as scary, the fact someone calling themselves the Watcher was writing it all seems like something you'd mention.
You'd think so. It establishes a pattern, right? A specific focus on that house. Their decision not to say anything.
Well, it definitely adds another layer of unease.
Definitely raises questions.
Okay, so fast forward just 2 weeks. Maria's back at the house looking at paint samples or something, goes to the mailbox.
And it finds another one.
Yep. Same white envelope, same kind of scrolled handwriting. And this time, her first instinct is just call the police. Doesn't even open at first. That tells you how scared they already were.
Understandable. That first letter clearly had a massive psychological impact. They're living under this constant cloud of anxiety now. And this second letter, it was longer, more detailed, and just deeply disturbing. It starts, "Welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard. I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings." The dumpster is a nice touch. Like, commenting on their moving process. "Have they found what's in the walls yet? In time they will," and they misspelled their name Broaddus.
Okay, the observation level is definitely ramped up. Noticing the dumpster and that what's in the walls thing again. So creepy. Is the misspelling deliberate, maybe? Like trying to annoy them?
Yeah.
Or just careless?
Who knows? But it gets so much more invasive. The Watcher actually brags about knowing more about the kids now, their ages, even their nicknames. Nicknames Maria had apparently been yelling out.
Oh, come on, how?
Right. The letter says, "I am pleased to know your names now and the name of the young blood you have brought to me. You certainly say their names often." And then, this incredibly specific detail mentions one of the kids painting on the enclosed porch and asks, "Is she the artist in the family?"
That is truly chilling. That proves they're not just glancing from the street. They are close, paying very close attention to the kids' activities. That's a huge escalation.
It's such a violation. Total violation of privacy, safety. The letter goes on, 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house.
Personifying the house now. Like it wants the kids.
Yeah. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream.
Oh my God. That line about not hearing them scream, that is pure psychological terror.
Yeah.
Highlighting the kids' vulnerability like that.
It's awful. Then more questions about where they'll sleep. Attic. Second floor. Which bedrooms face the street? The Watcher lays, "I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better."
Plan what better? It's so menacing.
And then this. "All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house."
Yeah.
Like their home is just a glass box for this person.
The feeling of being watched constantly, even inside. It's inescapable in those words. It's meant to make them feel powerless in their own home.
The Watcher then kind of restates their mission. Who am I? I am the Watcher and have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now.
Yeah.
Claims the Woods family turned it over to the Broadduces because the Watcher asked them to.
That sounds delusional. This sense of ownership, of control over the house and who lives there, it's completely detached from reality, suggests it's a really deep, unhealthy obsession.
Right. And the letter ends with these parting shots. "I pass by many times a day. 607 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession, and now you are too, Broaddus family. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me."
Wow, that accusation of greed again. It feels like there's some deep resentment there, maybe towards wealthy people moving into the neighborhood or just anyone in that house.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And the final line, "Have a happy moving in day. You know I will be watching."
Oh, it's so personal now. It's not just about the house anymore. The Watcher is explicitly targeting the Broaddus family.
So yeah, not surprisingly, after that second letter hits, the Broadduces completely stopped bringing their kids to the house at all.
I don't blame them one bit.
They were absolutely terrified, deeply uncertain about ever actually moving in. Their dream house had turned into, well, a living nightmare pretty much overnight.
That sense of safety they wanted, just gone, utterly shattered. The emotional toll must have been just immense.
And it didn't stop. Weeks later, a third letter arrives. Shorter this time. Just said, "Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you."
Creepy. Like the Watcher, or the house itself through the Watcher, is demanding they come back. Reinforces that fixation.
Yeah, so the family is just living in this state of constant fear, paranoia setting in. Derek canceled a work trip, totally understandable, didn't want to leave them alone. That sold sign outside the house. Someone ripped it down.
Another intimidation tactic, probably.
And feeling like the official investigation wasn't going anywhere fast, they started doing their own, setting up hidden cameras, documenting everything weird that happened. It really shows how desperate they were getting, right?
Absolutely. When you feel you have to investigate your own potential stalker because you don't feel protected, that's a terrible position to be in.
Suspicion naturally starts falling on the neighbors. And one family in particular, the Langfords next door, they became kind of a primary focus early on.
Okay, why them specifically?
Well, another neighbor at a barbecue apparently described them as odd, maybe harmless, but specifically compared Michael Langford to Boo Radley from To Kill a Mockingbird. You know, reclusive, maybe a bit unsettling to people who didn't know him.
Ah, the strange neighbor trope. That comparison definitely paints a picture, maybe unfairly, but it sticks in your mind when you're scared and looking for answers.
And here's the thing that really made them look suspicious. The Langfords had lived in their house right next door since the 1960s.
Which lines up perfectly with the watcher saying his father watched the house back then.
Exactly. And Michael Langford, who was in his 60s and still lived at home with his elderly mother and siblings, apparently had a direct view of the Broaddus's porch.
The exact porch where the watcher mentioned seeing the daughter painting.
Precisely. It all seemed to fit, didn't it? The timeline, the vantage point.
Yeah, you can see why suspicion would fall there. The proximity, the family history in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's the most obvious connection based on the letters.
So Derek reported his suspicions to the police. Michael Langford was interviewed, denied everything, of course. The police did say, officially, all the neighbors were technically suspects.
Standard procedure, but still highlights how hard it is to pin down without solid evidence. Lots of people live nearby.
But here's an interesting detail from the investigation. Detectives did some physical tests. They found that the exact spot on the porch where the daughter was painting, it actually wasn't fully visible from the street or even easily from the Langford's property line.
Oh, so what does that imply?
It suggested the watcher had to be much closer to see her that clearly, like potentially trespassing on the Broaddus property or maybe using binoculars from a very specific spot, perhaps even from inside the Langford house if they had the right window. It definitely raises the stakes.
It really does. It suggests a more deliberate, potentially bolder level of surveillance than just watching from afar. More invasive.
Investigators, and they even brought in a former FBI agent, they really picked apart the letters themselves. They noted the writing style, kind of old-fashioned, formal in a way.
Right, you mentioned that.
Yeah, mentions of the weather, the weird double spaces after periods, sort of literary quality but zero profanity, which is interesting, and this undercurrent of anger towards wealthy people.
Like a specific resentment.
Exactly. Some describe the letters as feeling like letters from the war, suggesting an older writer, maybe well-read, maybe someone perceived as less macho, given the style. It's like building a profile from crumbs.
Those stylistic quirks are definitely clues. The formality mixed with resentment. It points towards a certain kind of personality, maybe someone feeling overlooked or resentful of change in their town.
And here's a really key piece. The postmark on that first letter, traced to the main post office right there in Westfield.
Okay, so definitely local. Confirms the writer lived nearby.
Yes, and even more telling, the first letter was mailed the day before the sale of the house became public record.
Whoa, hang on. Before it was public, how?
Exactly. That strongly suggests the watcher either had inside knowledge, like maybe knew the sellers or someone involved in the transaction, or they were watching the house so closely they knew the deal was done before anyone else did. That's hard to ignore.
That timing is incredibly significant. It really narrows down the possibilities, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Points to someone very close to the situation, physically or informationally.
So, despite these clues, by the end of 2014, the official police investigation seems to have stalled out. Just hit a wall.
Leaving the Broaddus family in limbo.
Totally. Exhausted, paranoid, just living in uncertainty. Then, in June 2015, a full year after they bought the place they still couldn't live in, they filed a lawsuit against the previous owners, the Woods family.
For not disclosing that first letter they received.
Exactly, claiming they weren't told the whole story, which affected their decision to buy. It shows how frustrated they were getting.
You could understand their desperation. They felt the Woods had a responsibility to tell them about any weird communication related to the house, especially from someone calling themselves the Watcher.
The Woods, though, they defended themselves. Basically said their letter wasn't scary, wasn't a big deal. But this lawsuit, that's what blew the story wide open.
So that's when it went public.
Yeah, a local reporter found the legal complaint, wrote about it, and suddenly this family's private nightmare was everywhere. Viral news. It completely changed everything.
Oh, I bet. Public scrutiny on top of everything else. How did that play out?
Well, the public reaction, it wasn't all sympathy. A lot of people, even in Westfield, apparently started questioning the Broaddus's. Whispers about maybe it was just a prank they overreacted to, or even...
Or maybe they were making it up to get out of the house purchase they regretted.
Exactly. That theory started floating around. Derek was apparently furious, felt completely misunderstood by the community he'd hoped to rejoin. Imagine being terrorized and then having people doubt you.
That's awful. Victim blaming, essentially. It happens, unfortunately, when there are no easy answers and the perpetrator isn't caught. People look for explanations, even uncomfortable ones.
And adding another weird wrinkle, another family just up the street from 657 Boulevard came forward saying they had also received a letter sometime earlier. Similar style, but way less sinister.
Really? What did it say?
We don't have the exact text, but the implication was it wasn't nearly as threatening. They just dismissed it, threw it away.
So does that mean it was just a weird local prankster sending odd letters? Or was the Watcher testing the waters before escalating with the Broaddus's, focusing specifically on that house?
Good question. It muddies the waters, doesn't it? Was 657 special, or was this just a broader pattern?
Makes you wonder about the Watcher's real focus and motivation.
Detectives kept digging, exploring other leads. There was apparently a gamer guy, boyfriend of a woman who parked near the house sometimes, investigated him. An elderly couple living behind 647 whose son had actually grown up in the house looked into them too.
That he hits.
Nope. Nothing conclusive. Dead ends. They did get some DNA off one of the envelope flaps, though. Found it belonged to a woman.
A woman. Okay, that's interesting. Did they test Abby Langford, Michael's sister, who also lived next door?
They did, yeah, but it wasn't her DNA. So another lead that seemed promising just fizzled out. It felt like they were just hitting brick wall after brick wall.
Man, that must have been so frustrating for everyone involved, especially the family. Just no solid leads, no clear answers. Highlights how tough these anonymous cases can be.
Totally. So meanwhile, the Broaddus's are stuck. They obviously can't live there, but selling it, that became a nightmare too.
Because they had to disclose the letters, right?
Exactly. Legally obligated. And you can imagine telling potential buyers, oh yeah, beautiful house, but just so you know, there's an anonymous stalker obsessed with it who sends threatening letters about your children's blood.
Yeah, that's going to scare pretty much everyone away. A huge obstacle.
They even tried selling it to a developer. The idea was tear the house down, maybe subdivide the lot, just erase the problem.
Makes sense. Get rid of the focal point of the obsession.
But the town planning board, apparently fueled by opposition from some neighbors, blocked it. They didn't want the historic house torn down or the lot changed.
Wow. So the community, in a way, prevented them from taking what seemed like a logical step to escape the situation. That's rough. The house itself becomes this untouchable object.
It really does. It felt like the house itself was becoming this cursed thing they couldn't get rid of. And then just when things seemed like they couldn't get any weirder, a fourth letter arrives.
Oh, come on. After all this time, what did this one say?
This one was different, angrier, maybe, but also strange. It said things like, 657 Boulevard is turning on me. It used to be my friend, and now it is my enemy.
The house is turning on the Watcher now. That's bizarre.
Totally bizarre. I will fend off its bad things and wait for it to become good again. 657 Boulevard needs young blood. It needs you. Come back. Still demanding they return, still obsessed with young blood. But now, the house is the enemy.
That suggests a serious detachment from reality is deepening, personifying the house, feeling betrayed by it. It really reinforces that unhealthy obsession, and the persistence is just incredible.
And it wasn't the last one. In 2017, after the Broaddus's had given legal depositions for their lawsuit against the Woods, a fifth letter showed up.
Fifth. Good grief.
No.
Was this one different too?
Yeah, this one was described as much more wrathful, really angry. It taunted them. You wonder who the Watcher is. Turn around, idiots. Maybe you even spoke to me.
Playing games, trying to ramp up the paranoia.
Exactly. Maybe you do know and are too scared to tell anyone. Good move. And then it gets really specific about their attempts to sell or tear down the house. 657 Boulevard survived your attempted assault. My soldiers of the Boulevard followed my orders. All hail the Watcher.
Solstice of the Boulevard.
Yeah.
And knowing about the legal stuff and the demolition attempt,
Yeah.
that's deeply concerning. How would they know those details?
That's the chilling part. It suggests the Watcher wasn't just watching the house physically anymore, but was actively following the news coverage, maybe even the legal proceedings closely. The reference to soldiers, it adds this almost cult leader vibe. It's incredibly creepy.
It really is. Suggests they're plugged into the community gossip or news about the case.
So finally, after years of this terror, in 2019, the Broaddus family did manage to sell 657 Boulevard.
Okay, some resolution there, at least for them financially. Sort of.
Sort of. They took a huge loss, about $400,000 less than they paid for it, but they sold it. And the new owners, thankfully, as far as anyone knows, they haven't received any letters.
Well, that's something. Maybe the Watcher's focus was on the Broaddus's, or maybe something else changed. But at least the house itself seems quiet now.
Yeah, provides a bit of closure for the property anyway. The Broaddus family bought another place, still in Westfield, actually.
Oh, they stayed in the same town. That's surprising.
It is, isn't it? But thankfully, they haven't been bothered again at their new home. But there's a really unsettling twist that came out later.
Oh, what's that?
Derek Broaddus himself later admitted that he wrote some anonymous letters.
Wait, he wrote letters? Like the Watcher letters?
Not the Watcher letters, but he wrote anonymous, critical letters to some of his neighbors. Specifically, neighbors who had been publicly criticizing his family or questioning their story. And he admitted he mimicked the Watcher's style when he wrote them.
Wow. Okay, why?
He said it was driven by the intense paranoia and anger he was feeling. Being attacked by the Watcher, feeling unsupported or blamed by parts of the community, it pushed him to lash out anonymously himself.
That's incredibly complex. It doesn't mean he wrote the original letters, obviously, but it shows the profound psychological damage this whole thing did to him, right? Pushing a victim to adopt the tactics of their tormentor out of sheer desperation and anger.
Exactly. It adds this really difficult layer. It illustrates the trauma, but it also, inevitably complicated how people viewed the whole situation once that came out.
Blurs lines even more.
So where does that leave us? The core mystery, who was the Watcher? It's still completely unsolved.
Right. Just theories floating around?
Theories abound. Michael Langford is still a big one for many people, especially since he passed away in 2020. And the letters reportedly stopped around 2016.
Which could potentially line up if he had declining health before he died. It fits circumstantially, but there's no concrete proof linking him.
None. Other neighbors. Still theoretically possible. And yeah, despite police investigations and Maria's DNA not matching the envelope, some people still speculate the Broaddus's somehow orchestrated it all, though that seems incredibly unlikely given everything.
The lack of hard evidence just leaves the door open for all sorts of speculation, doesn't it? Without a confession or definitive forensic link, it's hard to close any of those doors completely.
And that Reddit thread we looked at, it really shows how obsessed people still are with this case. They're still picking apart details.
Yeah, like noting inconsistencies between the real story and the Netflix show. The show added a pool, changed the Langford's house location slightly, details people notice.
Right, and still debating Michael Langford's possible role, digging up things like an old trespassing incident in the neighborhood years ago, speculating about mental health.
And that point about some letters being postmarked in Kearney, New Jersey, a different town, not Westfield.
Yeah.
That's another lingering oddity people seize on. Why Kearney?
It just adds another layer of, to the whole thing.
And on Reddit, you still see the debate about whether Derek might have faked the letters.
Yeah, that theory persists for some. But others push back, pointing out, the U.S. Postal Service delivers mail without return addresses all the time. That's not weird. And arguing the tone of the letters felt genuinely disturbing, not like something someone would fake convincingly over that long period.
The debate itself just shows how much uncertainty still clouds the whole thing. People interpret the same facts differently when the core truth is hidden.
And that New York Magazine article really highlighted the devastating impact on the family personally, their isolation, the feeling that the town cared more about property values than their safety.
Yeah, that was a striking point. It painted a picture of a community perhaps not responding with the empathy you might expect. And it detailed that planning board meeting where neighbors fought against the Broaddus's, trying to subdivide the lot.
Right, showing those community dynamics and tensions at play. A family in crisis versus perhaps neighbors worried about neighborhood character or their own investments.
It adds that social dimension to the psychological horror they were experiencing.
So, yeah, we circle back to these huge unanswered questions. Who was the Watcher? What was the real motive, obsession with the house, resentment, something else entirely? And why did the letters just stop?
Those are the core mysteries, aren't they? The questions that keep this case so fascinating and unsettling. No neat resolution.
We've looked at the theories, the dead ends, the lack of answers, but what's absolutely undeniable is the profound, lasting damage this did to the Broaddus family. Derek comparing it to cancer,
Yeah.
something they live with every single day. It's just a brutal reminder of what happens when your fundamental sense of safety is violated so completely.
It's psychological scar tissue. It doesn't just disappear when the letters stop or the house is sold. It stays with you.
And that really brings us to our final thought for you listening. In a place that seems so safe, like Westfield was supposed to be, how easily can that feeling of security just be completely shattered?
Yeah.
What does this whole, frankly, terrifying story tell us about the assumptions we make about our neighbors, about how private our homes really are? Could something this bizarre, this frightening really happen to anyone, anywhere? It's a sobering thought to end on.
It really is. It forces you to confront the idea that maybe we don't know our surroundings or the people in them as well as we think, and how fragile that sense of everyday safety can actually be. The potential for the unknown to just erupt into your life. It's unsettling.